The distant hum of machinery filled the maintenance shaft as Hansol carefully adjusted the power couplings. Her tools floated beside her in the zero-gravity environment of Station K9's outer ring. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the climate-controlled suit she wore. The auxiliary systems had been acting up for days, and she was determined to fix them before her shift ended. A sudden vibration shook the station. Hansol grabbed her magnetic toolkit before it could drift away. The vibration grew stronger, and then came the explosion. The blast rocked the entire section, sending her tumbling against the shaft wall. Warning lights bathed everything in pulsing red as the station's AI announced an emergency. Warning: unknown vessels detected. Station defenses breached. All personnel proceed to emergency shelters immediately. Hansol's heart raced as she pushed herself toward the shaft's exit. Through the small observation window, she saw them. 3 massive ships unlike anything she'd encountered before. Their hulls seemed to shimmer and shift, as if they weren't entirely solid. The vessels moved with impossible grace for their size, effortlessly dodging the station's defensive fire. "Stellar wanderers," she whispered. Everyone knew the stories about these pirates, how they appeared from nowhere with technology centuries ahead of anything known to modern science. They never took hostages, never left survivors. Hansol had to get to the escape pods. She rushed through the corridors, passing panicked crew members running in all directions. The station shuddered again as another explosion ripped through a nearby section. Emergency bulkheads began slamming shut, forcing her to take a detour through the cargo bays. The cargo bay doors were already cycling open when she arrived. Hansol ducked behind a stack of supply crates as figures emerged from a shimmering portal, the pirates' boarding party. They moved with fluid grace, their environmental suits unlike anything she'd seen before. The material seemed to flow and adapt, more like living tissue than manufactured equipment. Hansol held her breath as they passed her hiding spot. Their language was musical, filled with tones her ears could barely process. She needed to wait until they moved on, then make a break for the emergency exit on the far side of the bay. But as she shifted position, her toolkit bumped against the crate. The sound was tiny, but in the relative quiet of the cargo bay, it might as well have been a thunderclap. Hansol froze, praying they hadn't heard. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shadow fell across her hiding spot. She didn't wait to see if they'd spotted her. Hansol pushed off hard, using the zero gravity to launch herself toward a maintenance access panel she knew was nearby. Behind her, she heard their strange language rise in volume and pitch. Something whizzed past her head, some kind of energy weapon that left trails of blue light in the air. Hansol reached the panel and yanked it open, squeezing inside just as another energy blast scorched the wall where she'd been. She pulled the panel shut and engaged the manual locks, then started crawling through the narrow maintenance tunnel as fast as she could. The tunnel led to a small storage area filled with spare parts. Hansol emerged from the access point and immediately noticed something wrong. This wasn't standard station equipment. The room's contents seemed to pulse with an inner light, and the walls had an organic quality to them. With growing horror, she realized she hadn't escaped into a station storage room at all. Somehow, she'd entered the pirate's ship. Before she could retreat back into the tunnel, a deep vibration ran through the vessel. The familiar sensation of artificial gravity shifting told her the ship was preparing to leave. Hansol rushed to the access panel, but it was too late. The tunnel had sealed itself, the material flowing like liquid metal to close the opening. She was trapped aboard a stellar wanderer vessel as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but Hansol forced herself to breathe slowly and think. She was an engineer. She could figure this out. First priority: find a safe hiding spot before anyone came to check this storage room. As she searched the space, she discovered that the organic-looking walls contained small alcoves that seemed to form naturally. One was just large enough for her to squeeze into, and the bioluminescent material dimmed around her, as if responding to her need for concealment. The ship's engines hummed to life, a sound unlike any drive system she'd ever encountered. The vibrations changed pitch, and Hansol felt the distinctive shift of a vessel entering hyperspace. As Station K9 fell away behind them, she curled up in her hiding spot and began to plan. She was alive, she had her tools, and she was surrounded by the most advanced technology humans had ever encountered. If she survived, the engineering secrets she could learn here would be revolutionary. If she survived, that was going to be the tricky part. A new sound caught her attention. Footsteps approaching the storage room. Hansol pressed herself deeper into the alcove as the door arised open. She held her breath as two of the pirates entered, their environmental suits now retracted to reveal surprisingly humanoid features, though their skin had a metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors in the light. They began checking the storage room's inventory, speaking in their musical language. Hansol remained perfectly still, grateful that the wall's natural camouflage kept her hidden. As she watched them work, she realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She wasn't just going to survive. She was going to learn everything she could about these mysterious beings and their incredible technology. The adventure had begun, whether she was ready or not. Days passed as Hansol learned the rhythms of life aboard the alien vessel. She created a small nest in the maintenance chamber, using her engineering skills to tap into the ship's power systems for basic needs. The chamber itself seemed to respond to her presence, adjusting its temperature and even forming small shelves in the walls where she could store the few supplies she'd managed to gather. The ship's design fascinated her. Unlike the rigid mechanical structures she was used to, everything here seemed alive. The corridors expanded and contracted like blood vessels, regulating crew movement. Lights pulsed in patterns that seemed to communicate information directly to the crew's neural implants she'd observed glowing beneath their metallic skin. Hansol spent hours studying the ship's systems through access panels she carefully opened. The technology was incredible: organic computers that grew and evolved, power conduits that could repair themselves, and engines that somehow tapped into quantum fields she'd only read about in theoretical papers. She developed a careful routine. During the ship's night cycle, when most of the crew rested, she would emerge to gather supplies from storage areas and study the ship's systems. The vessel's organic nature actually helped her remain hidden. It seemed to adapt to her presence, dimming lights around her and forming temporary hiding spots when crew members approached. One night, as she was examining a particularly interesting power node, she overheard two crew members talking nearby. Their translator implants were active, allowing her to understand fragments of their conversation. "The quantum harmonics are still unstable," one said, their voice carrying musical undertones that the translator couldn't quite process. "The last jump nearly breached the containment field." "The captain knows the risks," the other replied. "We have no choice but to continue. The coordinates must be found before it's too late." Hansol carefully recorded this information in her tablet. She'd been noticing subtle fluctuations in the ship's power grid, but hadn't realized they were related to quantum harmonics. More importantly, these pirates seemed to be searching for something specific, something urgent. As she worked her way back to her hiding spot, she passed the ship's medical bay. The door was open, and she couldn't resist pausing to peek inside. The technology there was beyond anything she'd imagined. Healing pods pulsed with bioluminescent energy, and diagnostic equipment seemed to float in midair, held in place by invisible fields. A sudden movement made her duck behind a wall extension. A crew member entered the medical bay, their skin shifting colors in a way that seemed to indicate distress. The ship's walls pulsed in response, and Hansol realized there was a deeper connection between the crew and vessel than she'd initially thought. Back in her maintenance chamber, Hansol reviewed her notes. She'd started mapping the ship's systems, trying to understand how everything worked together. The more she learned, the more she realized these weren't ordinary pirates. Their technology, their behavior, their apparent mission, it all pointed to something far more complex. She'd also begun to recognize individual crew members. There was the tall one she'd nicknamed Silver for their shimmering skin tone, who seemed to be in charge of engineering. Melody worked in communications, their voice carrying the most complex harmonics she'd heard. And Spark seemed to be a junior technician, always rushing around fixing minor systems. The ship's routine was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Hansol felt the vessel shudder as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through a small observation port in her chamber, she saw the swirling colors of a quantum storm, a rare phenomenon that could tear ships apart. The crew's voices became more urgent, their musical language rising in pitch. Hansol watched through access panels as they tried to navigate the storm. Their movements were precise, coordinated, but she could see they were struggling. The ship's quantum harmonics, already unstable, were being disrupted by the storm. Without thinking, she accessed a nearby control node and began making subtle adjustments to the power flow, using her understanding of the ship's systems to help stabilize it. The effect was immediate. The ship's shuddering decreased, and she heard sounds of surprise from the crew as their systems began responding more effectively. Hansol held her breath, hoping they wouldn't trace the adjustments back to her location. As the ship cleared the quantum storm, she heard the crew discussing the unexpected assistance. Their language carried tones of confusion and curiosity. They knew something had helped them, but couldn't explain what. That night, as the ship resumed its journey, Hansol made a discovery that changed everything. While examining a damaged data node, she found information about the crew's home system and the catastrophe that had forced them to become wanderers among the stars. These weren't pirates at all. They were refugees, searching for a way to save their dying civilization. The realization kept her awake long into the night cycle. She had a choice to make: continue hiding and gathering information, or risk revealing herself to help these people. Either way, she knew her adventure aboard this extraordinary vessel was far from over. As she drifted off to sleep, the maintenance chamber's walls pulsed softly, almost like a lullaby, and Hansol wondered if perhaps the ship had already made the choice for her. Captain Kita gazed through the bridge's viewing portal, his silver-scaled skin catching the light of distant stars. The ship's bioneural systems pulsed around him, feeding information directly into his consciousness through delicate neural links. Something about the data patterns troubled him. Jai-yun, run another diagnostic on the secondary systems, he ordered, turning to his first officer. These readings don't match our baseline. Jai-yun's fingers danced across the living control interface. Captain, I'm detecting more anomalies. Small repairs have been made throughout the ship, repairs we didn't authorize. The quantum stabilizers are running at peak efficiency, but our logs show no maintenance work. Keita moved to examine the readings himself. The ship's systems were indeed performing better than they had in months. Somehow, damaged components were being fixed, power flows optimized, and efficiency improved. Yet none of his crew claimed responsibility for these changes. In her hiding place, Hansol watched through an access panel as the bridge crew discussed the mysterious improvements. She'd been unable to stop herself from fixing problems as she found them. Every loose connection, every power fluctuation, every minor system failure, her engineer's training wouldn't let her ignore them. The quantum drive's warning tone suddenly filled the bridge. Hansol recognized it immediately. The harmonics were becoming dangerously unstable. Through her observation point, she saw the crew's neural implants flash with alarm as emergency data flooded their systems. Containment field is failing, Jai-yun reported, her voice carrying both its natural melody and urgent warning tones. The quantum matrix is collapsing. We have minutes before total drive failure. Hansol's heart raced. She knew exactly what was happening. She'd noticed the quantum harmonics shifting out of alignment days ago and had been making minor adjustments to compensate. But now the problem had grown too severe for small fixes. The ship shuddered as another wave of quantum instability rippled through it. Warning lights pulsed along the organic walls, and Hansol felt the vessel's biomechanical systems responding with increasing distress. Shut down the drive, Kite ordered. Prepare for emergency protocols. The shutdown sequence isn't responding, Jai-yun reported. The containment field is already too unstable, If it collapses completely, Hansol knew what would happen. The quantum energy would tear the ship apart, killing everyone aboard. She looked at her toolkit, then at the access panel separating her from the bridge. She had the knowledge to fix this, but it meant revealing herself to the crew. Another violent shudder ran through the ship. Through the bridge viewport, Hansol could see quantum energy beginning to arc visibly around the vessel's hull. The crew's neural implants were flashing rapidly now as they tried desperately to stabilize the drive. Hansol made her decision. She couldn't let these people die, not when she could help. With trembling hands, she opened the access panel and stepped onto the bridge. The reaction was immediate. Security fields sprang up around her as the crew turned in shock. Ki-Ta's skin shifted to a combat-ready metallic sheen, and Jai-Yun's hand moved to her weapon. "Wait." Hansol held up her hands. "I can fix the drive, but we only have minutes. I know how your systems work. I've been studying them. The quantum harmonics are out of phase because the containment field is trying to compensate for a calibration error in the main matrix." Ki-Ta's neural implants flashed as he processed this information. Another warning tone sounded, more urgent than before. 30 seconds to containment failure, Jai-Yun announced. "Let me help," Hansol pleaded. "I know I'm an intruder, but right now that doesn't matter. We'll all die if that drive fails." Ki-Ta studied her for a moment that felt like eternity. Then he gestured, and the security fields dropped. "Show us." Hansol rushed to the nearest control interface. The living tissue responded to her touch just as it had during her secret repairs. Her fingers flew across the controls, making adjustments she practiced in her mind dozens of times. "The containment field is trying to maintain perfect symmetry," she explained as she worked. "But your quantum matrix operates on a logarithmic spiral. You need to match that pattern." She input the final sequence. The warning tone stopped. The ship's shuddering ceased. Slowly, the quantum energy arcing around the hull dissipated as the drive stabilized. Hansol stepped back from the controls, suddenly very aware of the crew's attention focused on her. Ki-Ta approached, his silver scales now reflecting a mix of curiosity and caution. "You've been aboard my ship, making repairs, learning our systems," he said. "How long?" "Since the raid on Station K9, Hansol admitted. "I got trapped aboard during the evacuation. I'm an engineer. I couldn't help fixing things when I saw problems. I'm sorry for hiding, but I didn't know if you'd kill me if you found me." Jai-Yun's neural implants flickered as she accessed ship's logs. "Captain, the system improvements we've been detecting. They all align with her presence. She's been keeping our ship running better than we could ourselves." Ki-Ta's skin shifted through several colors as he considered this information. Finally, he spoke. "It seems we have much to discuss, human engineer, starting with how you learned to understand our quantum technology so quickly." The bridge crew gathered around as Hansol began to explain. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would change not just her fate, but the destiny of two civilizations. Security Chief Tai Young stood with his team, their weapons trained on Hansol as she sat in the ship's meeting chamber. The room's bioluminescent walls pulsed with gentle light, responding to the tension in the air. Unlike the harsh interrogation rooms Hansol had expected, this space felt almost alive, adjusting its environment to keep everyone calm. "Explain again how you learned our systems so quickly," Taeyong requested, his metallic skin shifting through shades of blue and silver. His neural implants glowed softly as he monitored her responses. Hansol took a deep breath. "Engineering principles are universal. Your technology is advanced, but it follows patterns. The quantum harmonics, the biomechanical interfaces, they're like a language. Once I understood the basic grammar, the rest started making sense." Captain Ki-Ta entered the chamber, the walls brightening at his presence. He carried a data crystal that glowed with stored information. "Your work on the drive system saved all our lives. Our scans show you made hundreds of small repairs over the past weeks. Why help us when we were your captors?" "I'm an engineer," Hansol replied simply. When I see something broken, I fix it. I didn't think about you being captors. I just saw systems that needed maintenance." The ship hummed around them, and Hansol noticed how the crew seemed to respond to its vibrations. Their neural implants flickered in sync with the vessel's pulses. She'd observed this connection during her weeks in hiding, but had never seen it so clearly. "Show us," Kita said suddenly, gesturing to a malfunctioning control panel. "Demonstrate how you understand our technology." Hansol approached the panel carefully, aware of Tai Young's team watching her every move. The living interface responded to her touch, displaying streams of quantum data. She'd learned to read these patterns during her time hiding in the maintenance chamber. "See this oscillation?" She pointed to a fluctuating pattern. "It's like a heartbeat that's slightly out of rhythm. If I adjust the quantum flow here," her fingers moved across the interface, and the pattern stabilized. The panel's light shifted from amber to a healthy blue. Keitai and Tai Young exchanged looks, their neural implants flashing in silent communication. Finally, Kita spoke. "What you've done is impossible. No outsider has ever interfaced with our biomechanical systems successfully. The technology rejects foreign users." "Maybe that's why you found me," Hansol suggested. "The ship didn't reject me. Sometimes it even helped hide me, changing its configurations to create safe passages." The captain's expression changed. "The ship chose you." He pressed his hand to the wall, his neural implants glowing brightly. The chamber's lights shifted through a series of colors, and Hansol felt a subtle vibration through the floor. The crew members' implants all pulsed in response. "Our vessel is more than a ship," Keatat explained. "It's a living archive of our civilization. When our home system began to die, we transferred the essence of our world into these biomechanical vessels. They carry not just our people, but our entire cultural memory." Hansol's eyes widened as she understood. "You're not pirates at all. You're searching for something." "A new home," Tai Yum confirmed. "Our ships can sustain us, but not indefinitely. We need a planet compatible with our biomechanical technology, one where we can rebuild." The ship's walls displayed star maps, showing the vessel's journey across countless systems. Hansol studied the patterns of their search, her engineer's mind already analyzing the data. "These quantum signatures you're tracking," she said, pointing to recurring patterns in the maps. "They're not random. They're like echolocations of your home world's unique properties." Kaita stepped closer to the display. "You can see the pattern. It's similar to how your ship's quantum drive operates. The harmonics match specific planetary conditions. You're not just looking for any habitable world. You need one that can support your biomechanical integration." The crew members looked at each other, their implants flashing rapidly. Hansol had just understood in minutes what had taken them years to map out. "We've lost too many ships following false leads," Tai Young said grimly. "The quantum signatures are becoming harder to track as our memories of home fade." Hansol touched the living wall gently, feeling the ship's response. "Maybe that's why your vessel accepted me. A fresh perspective, an outside view of the patterns." Kaita made a decision. "You will work with our engineering team. Your understanding of our systems, combined with your human insights, might be exactly what we need." "And if I help you find your new home?" Hansol asked. "Then you'll have helped save an entire civilization," Kite replied, "and perhaps bridge the gap between our peoples in the process." The ship's lights pulsed warmly, almost like an approval. Hansol felt the weight of the moment. She was no longer just a stowaway or even just an engineer. She had become part of something much bigger than herself. Tai Yum holstered his weapon and approached her. "I'll show you to the engineering bay. We have much work to do." As they left the chamber, Hansol noticed the ship's corridors adjusting to accommodate her presence, no longer hiding her but welcoming her. She had found her place among the stars, turning from intruder to ally in a quest to save a dying civilization. The real work was just beginning. Life aboard the ship settled into a new rhythm as Hansol worked alongside the engineering team. The biomechanical vessel no longer hid her presence, but actively responded to her touch, its systems eager to interface with her unique problem-solving approach. One evening, as the ship cruised through hyperspace, Jia-Yun found Han Sol in the engineering bay, surrounded by holographic displays of quantum data. The first officer's neural implants pulsed with interest as she observed Han Sol's work. "You've made more progress understanding our systems in weeks than most outsiders would in years," Jia-Yun noted, her skin shifting to a thoughtful shade of blue. Han Sol looked up from the display. "There's still so much I don't understand. Like why you need these specific quantum-based technologies from other stations. The patterns don't make sense for simple survival needs." Jia-Yun was quiet for a moment, her implants flickering as she communicated with the ship. The engineering bay's walls shifted, creating a sealed environment for private conversation. "It's time you knew the whole truth." The holograms changed, showing a star system Han Sol had never seen. 3 planets orbited a massive blue star, connected by streams of quantum energy that flowed between them like rivers of light. "This was our home," Jia-Yun explained. "We had mastered quantum engineering, creating a civilization that lived in harmony with these natural energy flows. Our cities, our technology, our very bodies, all were part of this quantum network." The display showed the star beginning to destabilize. Waves of destructive energy rippled through the system, disrupting the quantum rivers. "We had decades of warning, but even with all our technology, we couldn't prevent it. The quantum anomaly that consumed our star began breaking down the very fabric of our reality." Han Sol watched as the simulation showed massive ships, similar to the one they were on, being grown from the quantum-infused materials of their world. "You turned your cities into vessels. We had no choice. These ships don't just carry our people, they contain the quantum essence of our civilization. Every system, every biomechanical component holds memories of our world, encoded in quantum states." The truth clicked into place in Han Sol's mind. "That's why you raid technology facilities. You're looking for components that can help stabilize these quantum patterns." Jia-Yun nodded. "Without a planetary quantum network like our homeworld had, the patterns will eventually degrade. We'll lose not just our technology, but our entire cultural memory." Han Sol turned to a new display, pulling up data from their recent raids. "Show me exactly what you're looking for." Together, they reviewed the quantum signatures of every piece of technology the crew had collected. Han Sol's engineering background helped her see patterns that the crew, too close to their own technology, had missed. "Look at this," she pointed to a recurring frequency in the data. "These components aren't just similar to your technology. They're resonating with it, like they're speaking the same quantum language." Jia-Yun's implants flashed with excitement. "Can you track the source of these resonances?" Han Sol's fingers flew across the living interface. "They're not random finds. These components all originated from systems with specific quantum properties, systems that might be compatible with your technology." The ship's walls pulsed with increased intensity as more crew members began gathering in the engineering bay, drawn by the breakthrough. Captain Kita arrived as Han Sol was mapping the quantum resonance patterns across star charts. "If we follow these resonance lines," Han Sol explained, "they converge here." She highlighted a region of space, a system with quantum properties remarkably similar to your homeworld. "We've searched that sector before," Tae-Young objected, entering the bay. "Found nothing but dead worlds." "Because you were looking for planets that matched your homeworld exactly," Han Sol replied. "But what if we could adapt? Use these resonating technologies to modify a planet's quantum field instead of searching for a perfect match." The crew's neural implants lit up with rapid communications as they processed this new possibility. The ship itself seemed to hum with renewed energy. "It would take incredible precision," Jia-Yun said. "One mistake in the quantum modifications could destroy both the planet and our ships." "Then we'll be precise," Han Sol answered, pulling up new calculations. "Your people mastered quantum engineering once. With these components and your biomechanical technology, we can do it again." Kaita studied the data, his silver scales reflecting the holographic light. This could work, but we'll need more components, more precise quantum tools. I can help you find them, Hansol offered. Now that I understand what we're looking for, we can be more targeted in our searches. No more random raids. The captain nodded slowly. From refugees to pirates, and now perhaps to pioneers again. Our ship chose well when it helped hide you, Hansol. As the crew began planning their new mission, Hansol felt the ship's systems pulse with something that felt like hope. They weren't just searching anymore. They had a real chance at saving this remarkable civilization. The engineer in her couldn't wait to begin. The ship's alarms blared as 3 vessels dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path. Hansol recognized their design. Modified stellar wanderer ships, but stripped of their biomechanical beauty and turned into weapons of war. Du Hyun's fleet, Tai Young announced, his skin shifting to combat colors. They must have tracked our quantum signature. Hansol rushed to her station in engineering as the crew prepared for battle. The enemy ships opened fire, their weapons designed to disrupt the vessel's living systems. The ship shuddered under the assault, its biomechanical walls pulsing with distress. They're targeting our quantum stabilizers, Jai Yun reported from the bridge. Shield harmonics are failing. Hansol's fingers flew across the living interface, redirecting power to strengthen their defenses. The ship's trying to adapt, but their weapons are matched to our quantum frequency. Do Hyun's face appeared on the main display, his neural implants corrupted and scarred. Surrender your quantum technology, Kita. Your research into planetary stabilization is too valuable to waste on refugee dreams. The technology isn't meant for weapons, Kita responded. It's meant to save our people. Your people? Do Hyun laughed. The ones who ran instead of fighting. We'll put this technology to better use. The transmission cut off as another barrage hit the ship. Hansol felt the vessel's pain through her connection to its systems. These weren't just attacks. They were tearing at the quantum fabric that held the ship's memories. Tai Young, she called out. I have an idea. Their weapons are synchronized to our quantum frequency, but what if we could use that against them? The security chief joined her at the engineering station, his weapons still ready. Explain. In my physics studies, we learned about quantum entanglement feedback loops. If we modify our shield harmonics just right. Another blast rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed as systems began to fail. They were running out of time. Do it, Tai Young ordered. Whatever you're planning, do it now. Hansol's hands moved across the interface, the ship responding to her commands with desperate speed. She configured the shields to create a specific pattern of quantum resonance. When their next blast hits, she explained, it should create a feedback loop through their weapons. The entanglement effect will temporarily disable their systems. The enemy ships moved into attack formation. Hansol held her breath as she watched the quantum readings. The timing had to be perfect. Now, she shouted as Do Hyun's fleet fired. The blast hit their shields, but instead of breaking through, the energy twisted back on itself. Quantum feedback cascaded through the enemy vessels, temporarily disrupting their weapons. All guns, target their shield generators, Tai Young commanded. The ship's defensive systems responded, launching precise strikes at the disabled vessels. But as Hansol watched the quantum readings from the battle, something caught her attention. The way the energy was flowing, the patterns it created, they were familiar. Wait, she said, pulling up their research data. The quantum feedback, it's creating the same resonance pattern we've been searching for. Jai Yun rushed to verify the readings. She's right. The interaction between our ships is generating a stable quantum field. Hansol's mind raced with possibilities. What if this is what we've been missing? The quantum stabilization technology isn't just about finding the right components. It's about creating the right interactions. Even as they fought the battle, Hansol began mapping out new calculations. The quantum feedback from the weapon's fire was showing them exactly how to manipulate planetary quantum fields. We don't need to find a perfect match for your home world, she explained excitedly. We can use this principle to create the conditions we need. Du Hyun's ships were recovering, preparing for another attack. But now they had something more valuable than victory. They had the key to their salvation. Captain, Han Sol called to the bridge. We need to retreat. The battle showed us what we need to know, but we have to get this data somewhere safe. Keita understood immediately. With their shields still weakened, they couldn't risk losing everything they'd just discovered. The ship's quantum drive hummed to life as they prepared for emergency jump. Du Hyun's fleet launched a final assault, but Han Sol's modifications held just long enough. As they entered hyperspace, Han Sol began working frantically to document everything they'd learned from the battle. The quantum interactions they'd witnessed weren't just weapons effects. They were the blueprint for saving a civilization. Your human physics classes, Tae-young said, watching her work. They helped you see what we couldn't. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining different perspectives. Han Sol replied, not looking up from her calculations. We were so focused on finding something exactly like your home world, we didn't see we could create it ourselves. The ship's systems pulsed with renewed energy as they sped through hyperspace. They had the answer now, and a new race against time had begun. The quantum anchor took shape in the ship's manufacturing bay, a combination of biomechanical artistry and human engineering principles. Han Sol watched as the living metal grew according to her designs, the structure pulsing with the same resonance they'd discovered during the battle with Du Hyun's fleet. The theoretical models are holding steady, she reported, checking the readings on her interface. The quantum field is stabilizing exactly as we predicted. Keita stood beside her, his silver scales reflecting the anchor's gentle glow. To think that human physics theories would be the key to saving our civilization. The entire crew had worked tirelessly for months to reach this point. The chosen planet hung in space before them, its twin suns casting purple shadows across azure mountain ranges. Initial scans showed it was perfect for their needs, uninhabited but capable of supporting life, with natural quantum fields that could be modified to match their requirements. Beginning anchor deployment sequence, Jae-yun announced from her station. The ship's great doors opened, releasing the quantum anchor into space. It moved with purpose, guided by both automated systems and the crew's neural commands. Han Sol held her breath as the anchor descended toward the planet's surface. Everything they'd worked for came down to this moment. The device touched down in a valley between towering mountains and immediately began its work. Quantum energy rippled across the planet's surface in beautiful waves of light. The anchor was creating the same resonance patterns that had once connected the worlds of the crew's home system. But this time, the patterns were stable, controlled, and permanent. Quantum field is expanding, Tae-young reported, his combat-ready stance relaxing as the readings remained steady. Coverage at 10%, 20, 30. The crew watched in amazement as their new homeworld transformed. The quantum energy merged with the planet's natural fields, creating the perfect conditions for their biomechanical technology to thrive. It's actually working, Han Sol whispered, watching the data stream across her display. The anchor isn't just stabilizing the quantum field, it's strengthening it. More ships began arriving, the rest of their fleet, carrying thousands of refugees who had waited so long for this moment. The vessels took up orbital positions, their crews watching as their new homeworld took shape below. Keita turned to address his crew. Begin landing preparations. After generations as wanderers, we're finally home. The landing operations took several days. Han Sol helped coordinate the complex dance of ships and machinery, making sure each vessel's quantum systems integrated properly with the planet's new field. The anchor continued its work, spreading stability across the surface until the entire world hummed with familiar energy. As the first colony structures grew from the living metal they'd brought with them, Han Sol stood on a ridge overlooking the settlement site. The twin suns were rising, painting the azure mountains in shades of gold and purple. Below, biomechanical buildings took shape, merging naturally with the landscape as if they'd always been there. Beautiful, isn't it? Jai-yun joined her on the ridge. The perfect blend of your world and ours. Han-Sol nodded, watching more ships descend through the atmosphere. I never imagined when I was trapped in that maintenance chamber that it would lead to this. Kai-Te approached them, carrying something in his hands. It was a neural implant, but different from the others Han-Sol had seen. This one seemed to shimmer with a unique pattern. "We had this made for you," he said, offering it to her. "Modified to work with human physiology, but capable of connecting you fully to our systems. We'd like you to stay, Han-Sol, not just as our engineer, but as a bridge between our peoples." Han-Sol touched the implant gently, feeling its subtle resonance. "You're not pirates anymore," she said with a smile. "You're pioneers again, and I'd be honored to help build this new world with you." The implant procedure was quick and painless. When it activated, Han-Sol gasped as she felt the quantum field for the first time the way the crew did, not just through interfaces and displays, but as a living, breathing part of reality. Standing there on the ridge, connected to both her old life and her new one, Han-Sol watched another group of colony ships descend. They no longer looked like the feared vessels of the stellar wanderers. Now they were bringing families home, carrying hope instead of fear. The greatest adventures, she realized, often begin with a single unexpected moment, like an engineer getting trapped in a cargo hold. But they become legends when different worlds come together, when knowledge is shared, and when people choose to help each other, no matter their origins. As the twin suns climbed higher, casting their light across their new home, Han-Sol felt the quantum field pulse with possibility. The future stretched out before them, full of potential, and she couldn't wait to help build it. A new day had dawned for both civilizations, and it was more beautiful than anyone could have imagined.